All right. I really appreciate everyone joining us today for this webinar, Thriving Through M&A, the Human Side of Change. My name is Katie Burke. I'm the co-founder of Equita Financial Network. We are hosting this great webinar today. Any questions? Want to let everyone know, just a couple housekeeping things. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A in the Zoom bar at the bottom, and I'll be able to view those and go through them as we go through the discussion. Again, I'm very excited to introduce our presenters today. We have Amy DeTolla. Her firm, Aureus Advantage, works during and after deals, helping firms and teams integrate, adapt, and sustain momentum. We also have Emily Blue, CFA. She works before and during the deal through her firm, Hugh, helping founders and advisors prepare for the human side of the transition. So welcome again, Emily and Amy.
Thank you.
So as we've all been seeing in the news, the wealth management industry is consolidating really fast. But beneath every transaction are people navigating the emotions of change. Amy, you've said that deals are happening faster than people can process them. What are you seeing inside firms right now?
Well, it's absolutely true. And I'm sure Emily, being on doing what she does, can attest that I've never seen momentum and deals like what's happening right now. But what's also happening is that, the people can't keep up with the change. And firms will plan for the merger, and they'll plan for the integration, whatever you have to do, your timelines and your technology. But the human side of the transition is really kind of where I'm seeing things get a little bit lost, and where momentum get lost. Because at the end of the day, you have to realize is all of us, I would assume at one point, are going to go through some type of either succession, merger, or something along those lines, where our firm is either going to be acquired, or we're going to be joining a new firm, or making some types of change. And M&A really is about change. At the heart, it's about change, and change is really hard because change is very, very human. Even when it's a positive change, it can feel like loss. And if it's not managed thoughtfully, you really can get lost in the mix. So, outside of getting firms operationally organized, I'm also spending a lot of time with the firms that I work with, helping their leaders and firms basically find their footing on the human side of integration. So it's pretty busy out there.
It is.
Emily, you're usually in the room with founders before a deal even happens. What makes these moments feel so personal, especially for women?
Yeah. There was a study done recently where it said that 77% of entrepreneurs view their business as an extension of self. And so it's something so personal. It's something that they've dreamed about. Every founder and people on this call can relate to that feeling of taking that leap, standing at the edge of the pool and jumping into the world of entrepreneurship and, pouring themselves into the business. And what's unique about our industry is that at its core, it's all about relationships. It's all about the relationship between an advisor and a client, which makes the whole, M&A journey feel that much more heavy, because you're dealing with, change connected to relationships, change connected with something that you've built and view as an extension of yourself. And so that is what, that's what goes on. And so when we sit with founders, at Hugh, our role is to serve as a sell-side advisor for founders that are going through their own M&A event. Mm-hmm. And so we see a wide variety of emotions arise through the start to finish of the M&A journey.
So today we're going to explore, as both of you have mentioned, the journey before, during, and after the deal, and share ways women can lead through change with clarity, confidence, and purpose, which I love, right? We can learn about this topic, but actually giving us those steps to feel like we can lead this, I think it will be a great conversation. So let's start with the emotional side. M&A brings excitement, but as Emily mentioned, also a lot of anxiety.
Mm.
What really happens beneath the surface? And Amy, I'll ask you first what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I've personally managed over 60 M&A transactions, and my firm, or firms that I've been associated with, going back to even the BlackRock days, have been acquired. And only recently, when my wealth firm that I was running was acquired, that I started really figuring out that emotion, like even seeing more of that emotional side of it. And I think, when you talk about being beneath the surface, right, there's a concept that I believe applies to mergers, and that is change and transition are not the same thing. William Bridges is an author. He wrote a book named Managing Transitions. And the concept is that change is external and transition is internal. So change is that event, the merger, the new leadership, the rebrand, right? But transition is really what happens inside of us. It's that psychological process of letting go what was, living in that in-between stage, and eventually embracing what comes next for you. And that's really what mergers are all about. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of firms, they plan very well, not all of them, but I'm helping with them on the change part of it, the integration, the event that's happening. But they don't often plan for the transition itself, the human side of it. And that's just not the founders, that's everyone that's associated with the merger. And so that's where that human side really comes out. And that's where that what I call this change abrasion happens. And underneath that surface is what I've coined the 5 C's of change that people go through to. After going through so many mergers, I've identified these 5 emotional pressures that kind of happen in all of us during change, whether it's, again, changing systems, going through M&A, launching a business, right? There is this control, your control triggers, when decision making shifts, you're not exactly sure who's in charge, you start to lose that agency. There's comfort. Even when something might be inefficient and not the best way, it feels safe because it's familiar. Clarity, you're gonna go through this ambiguity starts to creep in, right? When your communication maybe is not consistent or you don't exactly know where we're going, you may have the clarity starts popping up. Confidence is the other part of it, is you have to maybe learn something new or unlearn what you're doing, and you start to figure out, I don't even know what I'm doing. And then last thing, I think with founders, sometimes will be calling. They'll start to think about, is this really what I set out to do? So when I think about mergers, these pressure points will come up with everyone, with yourself and your team at different points with different trigger points. And I think at the end of the day is recognizing that they're going to come up, and giving yourself, I guess the grace to understand that's going to happen to you and it's going to happen to others. So not saying you're not going to avoid these things, but allowing yourself a little bit of grace to understand these pressure points will come up as you go through this change box.
We talked about this a little bit the other day, but it's being ready for those uncomfortable conversations, right? And saying,
Yeah.
I know that this is what's going to happen and it's okay, right? It's okay
Yeah.
to have that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, it's not a weakness, don't see any of these things as a weakness when you start to feel like, oh gosh, they want me to change my brand. I don't want to do that, right? See, people see these pressure points that come up. It sometimes is like a fault in your stars. It's not a fault in your stars. It's just that these they're going to come at different times, and different people are going to have them at different times, and so you'll start to see these like a little bit of a little things happening at different times, and it can get a little bit anxious for you.
Emily, what have you seen that help advisors or founders move past these types of emotions?
Yeah. Yeah. There's that old saying that you're not the exception to the rule, you are the rule. And the second you think that you're the exception, you're going to be humbled and realize you're just the rule. That's this, right? And I think there's people on this call And, every one of my clients, that we've talked to at the beginning about preparing for that emotional journey, it's so easy to hear about like some of these topics and think, I get that, but that won't be me, right? I have navigated dozens of, clients as a financial advisor. You advise your client through, their, business transaction. And you sat right beside that particular client and helped them navigate that journey. And you saw the emotional roller coaster that they went on. And you think, well, I learned from all of those clients that I sat beside. And when I go through it myself, it's going to be different.
Mhm.
But the reality is we're all human. And there's nothing anyone can do to like stop or prevent emotion from arising. And a lot of the times, especially, male founders tend to try to fight the emotion
Yes.
and try to suppress it or not acknowledge it or deal with it. And so it just builds to a point where maybe you get to the legal docs of a purchase agreement, right? And the print gets really small, and that subsection 3, part 2B is so confusing. And you think, this is the thing this is the thing. They're over there twisting their mustache. They said one thing, but the legal docs came back. I'm not doing this deal. Was it really that one item in the deal that triggered their like reaction to wanting to like put the pencil down and walk away? No, it was a lot of little moments in the journey that maybe it was that anxious moment when they talked about go forward compensation, or as Amy said, when they started talking about the transition of the brand and ordering a new sign and some of those things, they just start boiling up. And so, one of the things that we say for all founders that are looking at kind of going through or exploring M&A is that the best thing you can do as a founder is to surround yourself with advisors. Just because you're a financial advisor does not mean that you do not need your own advisors during the biggest professional event of your entire life. You can only do it once. And so surround yourself with the right M&A advisor. Surround yourself with legal counsel that's not just legal counsel that's done a generalist deal in the community you live in, but find a legal counsel that has represented RIA transactions. And so when you surround yourself with the right thought partners and teams, when you have those moments that are going to happen and you don't know when or how it's going to arise, but when you have those moments where it's emotionally heavy or you're frustrated or you're anxious, you can have a sound, thought partner to help guide and navigate and challenge you and say like, I was on that call and they said that, but here's what they meant and here's how they're, working through it in the legal docs and here's how it's all coming together. Because as an entrepreneur, and Katie, I think you can relate to this, and Amy as well, being an entrepreneur, especially a woman entrepreneur, and leading an RIA can be really, really lonely. When you're thinking about making an M&A exploration decision, it's not like you're going to your team and telling everyone that you're thinking about doing this. There's a really long time between taking that step to explore it,
Yep.
Going through the exploration and then having your, wonderful, amazing team get brought in once you have clarity. So it can be really lonely. And when you're lonely through the biggest decision, it can make the emotions even heavier and compound on itself. And so the best thing advisors can do is surround themselves with great thought partners and great counsel to guide them through their event.
Yep. And I'd echo that too, is what Emily was saying is sometimes you'll have that sort of straw that breaks the camel back moment, and I'm sure Emily's had that when, you, where it could just be something that ticked you off, like a couple calls ago, or they said something and just the way they said it, and this is where women do have an emotional advantage because we get to see the undercurrents a little bit. You start to see, maybe the red flags, or I'm not sure how they answered that. So as you're having a great advisor like Emily by your side, or someone like, someone like me by your side, or you by your side, to be able to say, gosh, I really didn't like the way they answered that. And I don't know if we have this fear that we're going to be taken advantage of. And as someone that's been in this industry for 30 years, and the only woman on the trading floor, and the only woman at the conference, and the only woman here, there's always this fear, is like, am I being taken advantage? Am I going to be paid enough? Are they trying to pull the wool over my eyes? And so that's why it's really important to first acknowledge when you're feeling these uncomfortable moments, having someone to talk to, and seeing yourself through this, and understanding that it is going to be an emotional journey.
Excuse me. And I think that's so important, the point that both of you brought up, that the emotional awareness or these emotions going through, it's not a detour, right? We can use it as part to lead through this change. It's an important part of the change, and we are not any weaker for acknowledging that or going through the emotional process with our team around us.
If anything, you're going to be more powerful. Women could be more powerful because we're just a little bit more aware of what's really going on. And your little spidey senses will come up where you're like, wait a minute, what was that? So I think it's really important to sort of acknowledge those pressure points that are coming up, and having a good advice. Is it me, or did you hear that? So.
Right. So once the deal closes, culture is where things really get real. And Amy, you often say, and I love this,
Yeah.
that every firm has two cultures, right? The one they talk about and the one that they live.
Yes.
So what should people watch out for?
Well, again, having seen hundreds of wealth firms over my career, and looking at them, you'll walk, and I'm sure Emily walks in lots of worm where you have the big words on the wall, right? Confidence and all of this, right? And that's their culture, and we're culture. We have a mission statement, right? And that's sort of they say their culture, but really, honestly, where culture lives is not written on the walls. It's the leadership's behaviors, it's decision making styles, it's how they're responding to questions. And no two firms could ever have the same culture. There's just no way, because everyone has a different journey, and everybody has, your firms get developed a certain way. So there's no way you're going to be like, they have the exact same cultures, but you have to figure out a little bit around, what is culture? And to me, culture is simply people at scale. It's their values, it's their fears, it's their behaviors multiplied across that organizations. And again, no two cultures will ever be the same. So you need to look beyond the things that they say on the wall, and you start to think about, right, what is important to me? And as a woman, I've said this, we have really a unique advantage because we can see the room differently. You can notice the tone and the energy and the nuance. And that intuition is not soft, really. That is your superpower. It's strategic, and it'll help you see that culture underneath the culture. And so when you kind of combine that awareness and empathy with clarity, you can have that as your superpower. And so, you're going to see the culture of like the way we present ourselves, but real culture shows up when things start to get a little bit uncomfortable. So, just spot those disconnects early. And honestly, when they shift, don't be quiet about it. If there's something going on there, have the conversations with your trusted advisor. Or if they say something in a meeting that makes you uncomfortable, bring it up. Don't fester on it, right? And I think that women will have an outsized influence after the deal too. When you think about the undercurrent culture, you can be part of where this culture evolves together, right? So know that as you're joining a firm or thinking to join the firm, it doesn't end with you. It begins with you. And in culture, you can take that culture and you can evolve it into something new.
And something I love that we talked about the other day also was your idea of having culture buddies, right? When we talk about bringing these two cultures together, two separate firms, like you said,
Yeah.
could be very different. How do you make that, not this messy situation, but how do you make it a smoother process for your employees?
Yep. Well, that's, and firms don't do this as much as I think they should, is your team is going to feel this as well. As much as you're going to feel it, your team is going to feel it as well. So I love when firms have what I call culture buddies, or they actually intentionally bring teams together to figure out how you're going to go forward. Like if you're a client service person and you can be aligned with another client service person another time, you get to learn their words and, oh, that's just, we have this, or we have, such and such we do on Fridays. And so you start to get those culture buddies. It's really, really so important, especially with integration, to really be very thoughtful about teaming people up so they feel, I've said this before, that between signing and maybe 6 months in is a really hard time for everybody, and because you're not who you were and you're not who you're going to be yet. And so it's a very hard time for you. So really, doing your best. And if you are acquiring, if you're a firm that's acquiring, that happens to be listening here, really be intentional about creating that culture connection and those culture buddies. I think it's really important.
It's critical.
Yeah.
Emily, how can women align with a new culture without losing themselves? I think this is a great question.
It's so important. It's so important because that is something that everybody, struggles with. And so I think before you go through, uh, a transaction, one of the best things somebody can do is really be intentional with finding some time to define what is your culture today.
Mhm.
Really spend time holding up that mirror and knowing thyself and knowing what's important to you about your culture. So that fast forward when you're going to select your partner, you're doing so from the lens of, does this culture align with how I view culture? Because that kind of creates a starting point of alignment. But when it comes time to integrating, as Amy was talking about, one of the things that's really important to never lose sight of is that you can be part of a big firm, or even a regional firm, whatever that looks like. The buyer has their culture, but across different geographies, across different offices, there's this concept of a microculture.
Mhm.
And your future partner is not trying to disrupt the microculture of your office. What
Mhm.
works for your team, what makes your team feel loved, as Amy said, doing lunch on Fridays, whatever you're doing for your team to build that community and that sense of belonging, that's incredible important to maintain that. And then maintain that while also creating opportunities to learn about the broader culture and have opportunities to meet other colleagues and learn about different ways other offices are doing things, because it lifts everybody up by
Yeah.
sharing best practices and having that sense of community. But what often happens is that feeling of like misalignment or struggling with cultural integration starts from like losing sight of the microculture you have and like trying to preserve that
Mhm.
through the change box of integrating and aligning with a broader culture. So that's really important. And then, this concept you said, Katie, of, not losing themselves. I think a
Mhm.
lot of the times, what you forget when you're getting ready to integrate is, why did your partner firm fall in love with you to begin with? Why did they want to partner with you? And a lot of that stems from the reputation that you have in the community, the way your clients view you, the way your team has a sense of community. All of those things is the spark that started this, relationship and this partnership to begin with. And so what tends to happen is somebody, goes through an acquisition. They have this big marketing team supporting them, which is fabulous because they get new content, but they start to lose their voice. And maybe they don't post on social media, their personal social media account as much, or share, quite the same, that they used to, just because they want to leverage, the expertise of a bigger marketing team. And so when you're going through that integration, don't lose sight of your own personal voice and the power that you have within your network that you've built over years, and continue to have that voice, your voice, but leverage the resources and expertise of a broader marketing. And so that really just pours gas on the fire. It gives you more tools versus dilutes your sense of self or your presence in the community, because that's what, I mean, nobody wants that, but it's
Yep.
easy to um, go a little bit more quiet when you see this breadth of a marketing team and all that they're doing and all the tools that they have. But just, the things that you are doing that was working, keep doing those and then add the tools that they can provide to just pour gas on the fire.
Yeah. I would say is that, you know, firms that are, if firms that are want to invest in you, you need to invest in them.
Mhm.
And it's important that you do this, because what happens, as you start to go through the change box, these, if you're not careful, you can start getting your silos, right? They do it, we do it, they do it, we do it. If you start to get those silos for yourself, and you don't address it and kind of try to start working through that change and realize it's hard, you may find yourself on an island, or you may find yourself using those they and us and they and us. And as soon as you do, you got to realize that you need to take that responsibility of coming forward and making sure that you don't get lost on an island. And I understand that you've got to understand that during this time of change, it's going to be very clear to just get your feathers ruffled a little bit. But please don't allow that to silo you.
Mhm.
And switch gears a little bit, because we've been talking about, our advisor point of view, right, and what we should be thinking about. But transitions don't just affect us, right? The clients are feeling this change too, and this transition. So, Emily, how can advisors maintain client trust through this uncertain period?
Yeah. The number one thing that keeps a founder or advisor up at night when it comes to the transaction is, what will my client say?
What do they think?
And so there's this fear that when they tell their clients they need to justify it or explain it or list off the smorgasbord of all these services that they're going to have access to. And, you know, it gets so distant from what the client actually cares about. And the client really wants to know three things. One, are you still going to answer their call? Are
Mhm.
you still there? Like, are you selling and walking away? And they want to know that you're there. They want to know that when something goes wrong, they can call and chat with you. They want to know, the second is they want to know, was this good for you and your team? They want to know that nothing bad was going on with the firm and you guys, the people, you guys were all forced to sell. And they want to make sure the team is taken care of and well loved, and that this was a, celebratory like milestone for the firm, and to
Yeah.
treat it as such. Many clients are calling their advisor every day with some sort of life event to celebrate. This is the one that an advisor needs to lean in on and create that moment for the client to celebrate their, big professional event and create a congratulatory, like, bonding moment. And then the third, which I think will make everybody smile, is they want to know, is my fee going to change?
Yeah.
And it really is that simple. It's, are you still there? Was this good for you and your team? And is my fee changing? And we
Yep.
have had client after client go through, whether it's negative consent process, positive consent process, whatever you are, depending on what your agreement is, we've seen it all.
Yep.
And what's so funny to me is that these advisors will plan for these communications. And like, what if they say this? Or what if they ask me this? Or, feeling like they need to have all the answers for their new partner firm.
Yep.
And if they follow those three things, the client goes, okay. And then, like, want to talk about whatever life thing is going on or problem they're working through, or pick the brain of the advisor on some new and, whatever idea that's on their mind. And so the joke is like, you schedule 30 minutes with the client. The first 2 minutes is sharing the news and celebrating. And then the other 28 is like about the client again.
Yep.
But that's just the dynamic the advisor has and type of relationship. It's not about the advisor. It's always about the client. And so your update and news is this big. but their update, is that big. And so when you think about how to create client trust, address what's on their mind and just address what's on their mind. Go through those three things, create a celebratory moment, and then they're going to transition you naturally into talking about whatever's on their mind. And so
I,
that's what I would say.
yeah, and I agree with that too. And I can say through all my transactions, I've had so many advisors so worried about,
Oh yeah.
well, what my client think, are they going to leave me?
Yes.
I can tell you, I have not seen clients leave, maybe like
Oh,
one client that was was going to leave anyways, and it was the catalyst, but please don't be fearful. Your clients are there for you, right?
yes.
And they're there to celebrate you as much as you, like, Emily said, they're there to celebrate you as much as, and this transaction milestone for you as much as you are through all their big moments in life.
A data point, just to like kind of put a fine point on that, is client retention, even in the event of transaction and change, is 98%. The
Yep.
inertia behind, that advisor client relationship is so strong. And there's so much like, relationship capital and years of all these different life events that an advisor has helped navigate through that, the retention is what it is. Even though at the beginning of the call, Amy said we're in like record high M&A that we've ever seen, even still, client retention is still 98%. So that just goes to show that like that's not going to move the needle for a client or cause them to leave like you worry about. And the other thing I always tell people is that a client is there because of the name on the back of the jersey, not the name on the front.
Mm.
So, an athlete can change teams and you still love them because they're that athlete. I'm in Kansas City. So, like, I'm always going to love Patrick Mahomes,
Mm.
even though one day he may not play for Kansas City. Hopefully, he always does. But truly, like, it's the same concept with, advisory, like they're there because of the name on the back, not the front.
I love that. I even think of that from, at Equitom, we have some women who are launching new practices or making changes. This is always a conversation that comes up is how do I communicate it to my clients? And like you said, this is a celebratory thing. This is a great thing. And your clients are also going to think it's great and get behind you. So love that.
Love that.
And Amy, while we've been talking about protecting the client, but something that I think is on a lot of our minds too is during and after the transaction, how do we keep our career momentum, while
Yes.
everything is changing around us?
Yeah, it's not only your career, but it's also, if you have a team, it's, your team's momentum. And I say momentum doesn't happen by accident during change. You have to protect it intentionally. When everything around you is starting to feel unsettled, focus on what you can control. And what you can control is your clarity, your communication, and your connections. And that goes back to your team, and it goes back to your clients. So those, as you're kind of this momentum is all going to go back to that. And so a couple of things when it comes to your career and it comes to change. I love it. Emily had her three things, and I have the 3 conversations in 30 days that I would recommend to have if possible. One is with your leader. Where can I add the most value right now? Right? If you ask them, as we're going through this, where can I add the most value right now? What that does, it sets first alignment, and it also creates that visibility early for you. So with the leaders, then you go to the next, I would say next level is your peers. Whether it's your team, the team on the other side, or the peers, how can we support each other through this, right? That creates this horizontal trust crossed horizontally. So having team with your peers, and this we're talking about culture buddies, or finding someone else and maybe another advisor that has joined that you can have some alignment with, really building that trust horizontally. And then ultimately with your clients, reinforce number one, what is not changing. And what is not changing through any transaction is your commitment to their goals. So those 3 touch points can create clarity. We talked about our 5 C's, right? It can create clarity. It can create that confidence. And when you show up steady, right? And true, even if underneath you're like, holy crap, if you started kind of showing yourself, showing steady, looking like you're willing to move forward with them, although others around you will take that cue. And really that is, to me, is what I call leadership in motion. So, it's up to you to kind of take the reins on your future and your career.
And it's like you said, showing up consistently, right? That consistency is helping build trust within your firm, outside of your firm. So some great points there. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we're going to shift a little bit to opportunity. So Amy, you've said that every merger creates white space. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. I've been talking about this, right? Let's say you're joining a big firm, right? Or you're burning something new, right? Guess what? That's amazing. It's going to create new opportunities. I just talked about it. There's new leadership opportunities. There's new technology opportunities. Maybe there's new offerings for your clients, new opportunities to meet new teams, right? You've got to see this change as like white space for you, meaning like you can write on that whiteboard what you want your future to be. And don't sit back and wait, right? When you step into that space, and that could be something as volunteering to help with the integration, right? Or maybe mentoring others that are, having problems coming through the other side, or, becoming a good communication gap, person that can help these things. If you become the glue that helps these transitions go through, the firm that you're becoming part of are going to see you as an asset. And so the more you can see yourself, and that firm says, wow, this person really is something terrific. They really are stepping in. They really are looking to create something new from that white space that's ahead of me. So to me, is every transaction is a new opportunity to do something, because we're just going to keep moving. Life's going to keep moving, and it's going to keep evolving. So when you see a merger as an opportunity to do something new, you start to fill in that white space exactly how you want your story to go. So that's where I see the opportunity in the white space. And honestly, women who lean into that, we have a very special superpower. I'm going to tell you, it is. You end up sort of shaping that new culture for the firm, and you earning that influence without really having to ask for it. And I think that helps you shift from that surviving to thriving, and going from like this, why is this happening to me, to this, how can I add value here? So I think mergers create this amazing white space for new career opportunities.
Well, and the
You
white
gotta-
space is also really nice because in partnership, there's going to be things that naturally come off your plate because there are people now to help, take those things off your plate. And so as you're going through the white space exercise that Amy talked about, it's also, as things fall off your plate that were not, your highest energy adders, of your day. Like, how do you want to fill that? And how can you best fill that with things that you love doing? It's kind of a great reset.
Yep. If you're calm, right? If you're clear and you're very collaborative, it's going to set you apart. Because most of the time people are just a little bit angry and a little bit frustrated and confused. If you're really showing up clear and seeing these things as opportunities, you will create opportunities for yourself.
And Emily, specifically, you've watched a lot of women who have turned this disruption and transition into growth, right? So how do women do that differently?
Yeah, there's this concept of niching down. And whenever you niche down, like niche down again. And I think women are the best at that. I think that there's a lot of my favorite question to ask an advisor is like, if you look across your client list, like what profiles emerge or what niches emerge. And a lot of the times I hear like entrepreneurs and business owners. But if you drill down a layer further, like are you a specialist in entrepreneurs that are in the restaurant industry or whatever? Maybe you have a dentist concentration, and so
Yeah.
there is this fear that if you niche, you limit your opportunities. And one of the things that I've seen, a lot of really strong women advisors do is say like, I'm not going to go into that fear. of, the scarcity of opportunities, and I'm going to be leaning into my strengths and, honor my niche. And when you become the expert at working with whatever niche, whether it's divorce and widows or a certain business segment, you become the go-to person very, very quickly. I dealt with that personally, right? When you think investment banker, if I was like, please draw a picture of who you pick, imagine as an investment banker, it is certainly not probably what I look like, right? You think of like the blue suit and you think of like New York City or, whatever. You don't think a Kansas City female. And the other thing that I did when I launched was I said, you know what? All these investment bankers are just focusing on it being a spreadsheet exercise. It's so much more than that. There's a human side, and developed a whole client experience centered around both an amazing outcome and getting a great fit and, balancing kind of the human side. And so many people were like, oh, that's a risky move. That might not be well received by the market. And I said, that's me though. Like, I don't know how to do it any other way than doing it the authentic way. And I think that is the most successful women advisors that I see say, listen, I'm authentically me. And there are going to be clients that are so for me and can't imagine not working with me. And there's going to be clients that are not for me. And I'm so grateful to recognize that those are not my people and not my, clients that I want to, be their financial advisor for. That discipline is just so critical, and it causes women that lean into that to be so much happier with the work they do for their clients. And Katie, I know this is like very personal to what you experienced as well. So
Yeah. I went through that as well too, when I was launching my business. Now you can see my logo here, but it's a butterfly, and because I help with transformation, and I was talking to a business coach, and he's like, "Nobody wants a butterfly," you know, and I'm like, "Well, I do." So it's being okay to be being authentic to yourself, and realizing that, just be you. Find a partner on the other side that really highlights who you are, and know that, like, not everybody is not everyone is for you, but know thyself first, and be comfortable with that.
It's interesting because as an advisor and helping, support other advisors through Equita, a lot of the conversations do come up of, well, if I'm coming from a large firm or launching my own or any of those changes, you know, you feel like you're not selling anymore, right? Because you're your authentic self. Like, I'm not selling when I speak to my clients. I'm just talking about what I do, and I love what I do so much and how everything is working in my firm that I feel like it's not even part of my daily process.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to do marketing and everything, but I just love that transformation for me, right? When I launched my firm, that I didn't have to worry about what am I selling? How am I going to get new clients? It's Katie, and I'm out there talking about what I love to do.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, love it. And that's the superpower of women.
Truly.
So I love that we're talking about, just disruption, which kind of, can maybe have a bad connotation to it. But we're talking about it's not just something to manage, right? Something to we can actually leverage and put and help us in our career growth, and help us, like you said, lead into those opportunities that this might be creating for us in our business.
Yeah.
So we are coming up sort of on the end here. And again, if there's a couple questions, we might have time for that. But in our last couple minutes here, I wanted to, of course, hear a final thought or some final thoughts from both of you. So Amy, if you want to go first.
Sure. I would say is thriving through M&A is about aligning who you are with what is next, right? And understand that change doesn't have to fragment you. It can actually focus you, focus where you want to go. When you approach this transition sort of with awareness of who you are, that empathy that's within you, you start to build that resilience and that confidence. And know you're going to have these pressure points. You're good when you're talking to an Emily and you're thinking about all these things are going to come up. Just know that it's natural, and know that you're going to come out the other side. Just give yourself grace, give others grace, and really look forward, because it's exciting. What's coming forward is exciting, but don't sit back and wait. Really, jump in and understand that you're going to go through a change, and it's going to be, but change, when it comes from you authentically coming through and understanding you're going to come out the other side, you'll end up in a much better place. So that's my advice, is just embrace the change.
Yeah.
Love that. And what about you, Emily?
The people, it's easy to fight change, and M&A is not slowing down. I mean, this is a record year this year, and we're going to continue to see record year after record year, probably for the next decade. And it can cause some founders to go, oh gosh, change is scary. I'm not going to sell until I'm, ready to retire or be done. But the smartest founders recognize that M&A is all about talent. And so the longer time horizon you have with your future partner firm, the more value you are able to obtain from your once in a lifetime event. Waiting until you're done and ready to, pass the keys and skip off into the sunset, that is a losing strategy, because M&A in wealth management, it's not selling and walking away. It is selling and moving in with your future partner and working together. And so the longer you have with that partner, the more optimal your outcome is.
Yeah. Creation.
So I have a question for each of you. How does a firm engage with you? Like, when do they engage with you for the process? And how do they do that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So yes. So
Go first,
Amy
Em.
and I have kind of different roles, right? And so at Hugh, we're the sell side advisor. So when a firm is contemplating a transaction, that is when they engage you to kind of walk through kind of what the house looks like, and the team looks like, and create a go-to-market strategy to bring in the right potential partners for them to meet. And so really that is the point in which we engage, and we're with them all the way through to the closing, and then supportive beyond that. But that's kind of our kind of scope. And then Amy, you can kind of talk about the integration work you do and where that comes into play.
Yeah. So my business is two areas. I help businesses clean up, because I have built and run mega firms over my time. I do often work with people on, I want to clean up my house, or I want to get myself in a better place. But I'm usually working with the acquirer to get them ready for the merger. So if you're thinking about bringing on a team or bringing on an advisor, or even if it's a small transaction, talk to me. I'll help you think about how to get yourself organized, how to get your team, ready to be, to go through this, because it's going to be very hard on your team. So I would say is if you're thinking of bringing advisors on or growing inorganically, I'll help you get organized. And again, if for some clients, I also just help clean up your shop, because I can't help myself, but do people, process, and technology. But I would say on the M&A front is I help you really get organized, and I help get your team emotionally ready to go through this change. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, is change doesn't happen to you, it happens through you.
That's great.
One thing that I want to leave for all of our attendees today, again, thank you for joining. And we might be done a couple minutes early, which is, I thought we were going to run up right against time, but we did it.
Yeah.
We stayed on task here.
That's because we're women and we're efficient.
So I think one thing that everyone can take away is to really have a moment and jot down something that captures how you would show up through change, and how you're showing up through change for your firm, for a transition your company is going through, for your employees. We've had all these discussions about how we can show up. So how are you showing up, or how do you want to show up in the future? Because like you said, this isn't going away. And I think we all need to be prepared for growing teams, growing our industry, especially as women, and we have our superpowers to be able to do that. So
that's a great takeaway.
I love that.
And I am, again, thank you everyone for joining. I had one more slide to put up, but I'm sorry, I still can't read my screen. But it has some more information about Amy and Emily and their firms, as well as some more information about Equita Financial Network. So please know that as an attendee to this call, you will receive the recording as well as the slides. And if anyone you know would perhaps be interested in listening or learning, getting some more information, please let us know. So thank you and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.